They didn't have to say it. The glances across gold-rimmed glasses, the half-smirks curling under the weight of designer labels, it was enough. I had lived in their world long enough to know when I was no longer welcome. My name is Nathaniel Brooks, Nate to the few who cared enough to remember, and at 32, I was the Brooks family's favourite ghost. An embarrassment they dressed up in, forced invitations and fake smiles, paraded around when it suited their image, and quietly discarded when it didn't. Across the wide marble floors of my father's estate in Bel Air, the Brooks dynasty glittered in full force. Real estate tycoons, hedge fund magnates, luxury developers, all polished to perfection, all pretending the prodigal son wasn't standing 3 steps from the door. Richard Brooks, my father, once mapped my entire life on the back of a cocktail napkin, over a $5.00 bottle of whiskey, Harvard Business School, junior VP at Brooks Financial Holdings. Marriage into the Collins family, sealing our empire with old money and fresh scandal-proof headlines. I crumpled that napkin 10 years ago and walked away. Instead of silk-lined boardrooms, I chose a crumbling studio in West Hollywood, 3 freelance programmers, and a half-mad dream to build an AI that could outthink Wall Street itself. They never forgave me for it, or maybe they never understood. Same difference. Samuel Brooks, my younger brother, was the golden boy now. At 28, he'd done it all. Wharton graduate, heir apparent at Brooks Financial, and soon to be husband of Andrea Collins, the socialite daughter of a real estate empire even older than ours. Their wedding would be the event of the season, a glittering spectacle in the heart of Beverly Hills. A celebration of success, alliances and bloodlines. And me? I was the footnote, the pity invite, the one they'd whisper about when the champagne started flowing. I hadn't planned to go. Honestly, I hadn't planned to even open the invitation. But fate and a single unsigned contract lying on my desk had other plans. Plans worth $50 million and counting. The timing was almost poetic. The same week my family prepared to crown Samuel as the future of Brooks' legacy, I was closing the kind of deal that could crush theirs, or save it if they ever swallowed enough pride to ask for my help. Funny thing about ghosts, sometimes they don't haunt houses. Sometimes they haunt memories. And sometimes they walk back into the ballroom, not to beg for a place at the table, but to flip it over entirely. And I had every intention of doing exactly that. The envelope arrived on a Thursday. Thick, cream-coloured, sealed with a wax stamp that practically screamed, "We have more money than taste." It sat on my kitchen counter for 2 days, unopened, next to half-empty coffee mugs and blueprints of a world no one in my family even knew I was building. I wasn't sure why I finally picked it up. Maybe morbid curiosity. Maybe some small, battered corner of me still craved proof that they remembered I existed. Inside, a square of gold-foiled cardstock. Samuel Brooks and Andrea Collins request the honour of your presence. I almost laughed. Honour. Funny word, coming from people who treated me like a stain on the family crest. In smaller, more delicate font, someone, probably Andrea, had scrawled, "Formal attire requested. Please be punctual." A footnote beneath all the fanfare. A whispered command to behave, to blend in, to stay silent. I placed the card back in the envelope and left it there. I had no intention of causing a scene. No drunken speeches. No public accusations. Not my style. Success, after all, is the sharpest kind of revenge. It cuts cleaner than any insult, leaves deeper scars than any slap. And soon I would have more than enough blades at my disposal. Back at my desk, my laptop hummed quietly. Lines of code shimmered across the screen, the heartbeat of my company, my gamble, my future. A future that just yesterday had crystallized into something terrifyingly real, a $50 million acquisition offer, signed, sealed, waiting for my final nod. I hadn't clicked accept yet. Timing, like revenge, was an art form. You didn't fire your arrow when you first saw the enemy. You waited. You watched. You struck when they were most certain of their victory. Samuel's wedding? The perfect battlefield. I imagined the looks on their faces, my father's tight-lipped disbelief, Samuel's frozen smile, Andrea's polished mask cracking at the edges. Not because I needed their humiliation, but because, somewhere deep down, I wanted them to see what they'd thrown away. I wanted them to understand that while they were busy perfecting appearances, I was busy perfecting reality. And reality, brutal, unglamorous, undeniable, was about to crash their party harder than any drunken speech could ever manage. So I RSVP'd, checked the box marked attending, pressed send without a second thought. Then I leaned back in my chair, laced my fingers behind my head, and smiled at the ceiling. Let them think the black sheep was coming to bow his head. Let them think I still needed their approval. In 3 weeks, under 1,000 chandeliers and 1,000 more judgments, they would learn a lesson no dynasty, no bloodline, no carefully curated guest list could protect them from. Sometimes the ghost you bury comes back wearing a crown. The night of the wedding arrived with all the subtlety of a tidal wave. Beverly Hills glittered under a bruised purple sky, the streets humming with the low growl of black SUVs and polished Bentleys. The Ritz-Carlton stood at the heart of it all, draped in gold and white, like a shrine to excess. Crystal chandeliers blazed through the ballroom windows. Doormen in tailored suits bowed low to guests, stepping onto the blood-red carpet. I stepped out of the car alone. No entourage, no designer labels screaming for validation. Just a tailored black suit, clean lines, sharp enough to wound. The air tasted thick, expensive perfume, gardenias, money burning itself into the night. Inside, the ballroom was a fever dream. Ice sculptures twisted toward the ceiling. Waiters floated between tables, balancing trays heavy with caviar and champagne. The Collins and Brooks families reigned over it all, a court of manicured smiles and diamond-pinned hair. It would have been almost beautiful if it weren't so hollow. Heads turned as I entered, their smiles faltering mid-conversation. Some whispered. Others glanced quickly away, as if shielding themselves from some contagious failure. One or two even offered tight, polite nods, the kind reserved for awkward accidents you're pretending not to see. I moved through them like smoke, not rushing, not hiding. Richard Brooks stood near the head table, deep in conversation with a senator whose name I couldn't remember. When he saw me, his eyes sharpened, cold calculation flickering behind the practiced warmth of a man who measured affection in terms of utility. There was no embrace, no welcome, only a curt nod, as if I were a misplaced piece of furniture that had somehow dragged itself back into view. "Nathaniel," he said, voice low and even. "You're here." As requested, I said, letting the words hang in the air. He didn't offer his hand. Neither did I. From the corner of my eye, I spotted Samuel and Andrea on the elevated dais, draped in designer perfection. Samuel wore a navy tuxedo cut, so precisely it probably required its own insurance policy. Andrea's dress glittered like the surface of a frozen lake, beautiful, brittle, and dangerous underneath. Their eyes locked onto me. Samuel's smile tightened into something that might have been amusement or pity. Andrea's expression didn't change at all. The queen of the evening, surveying an unwelcome guest at her coronation. I offered them a polite, meaningless nod and made my way toward the periphery, choosing a table near the back, out of the spotlight but not out of reach. I wasn't here to bask in their approval. I was here to deliver a gift, and I had no intention of missing the perfect moment. The night unfurled in layers of glittering monotony, toasts, dances, exquisite food that tasted like nothing at all. I watched it all unfold, a detached observer taking notes at the dissection of a dynasty. My family moved through their paces flawlessly, toasts from business partners, laughter that sounded just a little too brittle, smiles stretched a little too thin. It was a performance they'd perfected long before tonight. But beneath the surface, I could feel it, the tension, the desperation masked by champagne and pearls. The Brooks name no longer held the ironclad promise it once did, and they knew it. They clung to appearances, because appearances were all they had left. At precisely 9:30, as the band transitioned into a cover of some top 40 love song, the MC called for the newlyweds to prepare for the gift presentations. Perfect. I rose from my seat slowly, feeling the weight of the small envelope in my inner jacket pocket. It wasn't heavy, but what it contained could have flattened every ego in this room. The guests clustered around the front of the ballroom, eager to present their offerings. Tiffany boxes, handwritten vows, extravagant vacations tucked into gold-lined cards. When it was my turn, I didn't step forward right away. I waited for Samuel's impatient glance, for Andrea's subtle, annoyed whisper to the wedding planner, for my father's slow, deliberate tightening of his jaw. Then, and only then, did I approach. The envelope, unmarked, understated, rested easily in my hand. Samuel raised an eyebrow as I stopped before them. Andrea offered a tight, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Didn't think you'd make it," Samuel murmured, loud enough for the front tables to hear. I smiled back, all teeth and no warmth. "Wouldn't miss it," I said. I placed the envelope gently on the table between them. Simple, silent, no grand speeches, no last-minute jabs, just a quiet offering wrapped in inevitability. Andrea picked it up with a manicured hand, her eyes flickering briefly with annoyance. No brand name, no velvet box, clearly not something she could flash on Instagram later. She slipped a finger under the flap and pulled free the stack of papers within. At first, her expression remained placid. Then she reached the second page. The colour drained from her face so quickly it looked almost theatrical. Samuel leaned over, frowning, reading alongside her. And there it was, the shift, small, subtle, a ripple across still water. Confusion, shock, panic, carefully disguised as polite interest. Richard Brooks moved toward us, sensing, as he always had, that something was slipping beyond his control. Andrea's hands trembled slightly as she reached the page that bore the acquisition number, $50 million. Projected valuation, $150 million within 2 years. And in bold, unignorable ink, Nathaniel Brooks, founder and CEO, their golden empire, meticulously built on legacy and backroom deals, looked suddenly fragile. Because here I stood, no longer the exiled disappointment, no longer the black sheep. I was the wolf, and I had just walked straight through their front door. Silence fell like a dropped crystal glass. It started small, a single breath held too long. Then it spread. From Andrea's frozen hands to Samuel's furrowed brow, to the subtle, desperate shifting of bodies in designer suits and silk gowns. Whispers bloomed at the edges of the crowd like vines, curling around champagne flutes and polite facades. I said nothing. I didn't have to. The documents spoke louder than I ever could. $50 million today, $150 million projected in 2 years. Ownership, Nathaniel Brooks. Not a fluke. not a handout. A fortress I had built while they laughed over their wine and their carefully orchestrated deals. Andrea recovered first, or tried to. She snapped the envelope shut with a trembling flick of her wrist, plastered a brittle smile onto her face, and leaned in towards Samuel. "What is this?" she hissed, voice low but audible to anyone standing close enough. Samuel's face, already pale, flushed with a creeping, furious red. His hands fumbled at the papers, scanning them as if sheer willpower could change the words printed there. Richard Brooks arrived then, all heavy steps and tighter than usual smiles, carrying the false assurance of a man used to controlling every room he entered. "Nathaniel," he said, voice syrupy smooth. "Care to explain what exactly you're doing?" I turned to face him fully for the first time that night. No deference, no apology, just fact. "Celebrating," I said. A small, measured smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "Isn't that what tonight's about?" His jaw tightened so sharply I could almost hear the grind of enamel. It was a beautiful thing, watching a man realize the script he had written no longer applied. Samuel stepped forward, shaking with the effort of holding himself together. "You?" he stumbled, catching himself. "You never said anything, not once." "No," I agreed, casually straightening my cufflinks. "I didn't." Andrea shot a quick, panicked glance around the ballroom, as if counting the number of eyes now turned toward us. It was too late. The story was already being written in real time. The fallen prince, the forgotten son, the empire quietly slipping through manicured fingers. Some guests, sensing the shift, found urgent reasons to check their phones or relocate to the bar. Others simply watched, entranced, like spectators at a slow-motion car crash. Richard tried again, his voice pitched low for diplomacy. "Nathaniel, this is impressive, truly. But you should have come to us sooner. We could have helped," I asked, tilting my head slightly. The word was a blade, and I enjoyed the way it sliced through the air between us. Richard hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Everyone saw it. The invincible patriarch suddenly revealed as all too human. I took a step closer, voice dropping into something only he and Samuel and Andrea could hear. "You spent a decade teaching me I wasn't worth investing in," I said quietly. "You made it clear I had no place at your table." I let the silence stretch, savouring the slow burn of humiliation staining their cheeks. So I built my own. And with that, I turned away. No fireworks, no dramatic exit. Just the simple, devastating refusal to play by their rules anymore. I found myself outside on the stone terrace a few minutes later, breathing in the cooler air, watching the city glitter below like a galaxy strewn across black velvet. It should have felt triumphant, victorious. Instead, it felt clean, empty, almost, not bitter, not sweet, just necessary. Behind me, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the wedding staggered on, a machine too big to stop, even as it coughed and sputtered under the weight of what had just happened. Andrea still smiled for the photographers, though her knuckles were white around Samuel's arm. Samuel, for his part, looked as though he might implode at any moment. Richard stood in a corner, speaking rapidly into his phone, no doubt calculating how to spin this, how to contain the damage. They could try. It wouldn't matter. By tomorrow morning, the news would leak. Nathaniel Brooks, the lost cause, the black sheep, had just outmaneuvered them all. The irony would not be lost on the financial world. Brooks Holdings, a dinosaur clinging to outdated prestige, might soon need to court alliances with the very son they'd discarded. And me? I no longer needed their permission or their admiration. I had my own kingdom now, built with my own hands, funded by my own sacrifices, defended by no one but myself, no father's approval, no brother's shadow, no family's blessing. Only the hard, undeniable truth. They had raised a son strong enough to survive without them, and smart enough to know he was better off that way. I pulled my phone from my pocket, thumb hovering over the screen. The acquisition offer still waited there. One click, one signature, a full circle. I didn't hesitate anymore. I tapped the screen. Accepted. The city lights below seemed to shimmer just a little brighter. Inside, somewhere, Samuel raised a toast with trembling hands. Richard muttered into his phone. Andrea smiled like her life depended on it. And me? I slipped the phone back into my pocket and smiled at the horizon. Sometimes you don't need to burn bridges. Sometimes you just build a better city on the other side of the river. The calls started the next morning. At first, I ignored them. Richard, Samuel, even Andrea, though her number was listed under some sanitized assistant's name. They tried every angle: professionalism, guilt, bargaining cloaked in flattery. Each voicemail sounded more strained than the last. "We should talk, son. You've made quite the move. Let's discuss opportunities. You belong with your family, Nathaniel." That last one almost made me laugh. Belonging. Such a small word, such a heavy chain. I let the messages pile up like autumn leaves, something beautiful in their slow decay. Meanwhile, the headlines spread like wildfire. Tech upstart Nate Brooks secures $50 M deal, set to disrupt financial forecasting industry. The forgotten son of Brooks Holdings might just save their legacy without them. New blood, new rules. Nathaniel Brooks reshapes fintech landscape. Richard must have hated every word. Samuel even more. They had built an empire based on old money, old names, old favors. And here I was, a living contradiction, no legacy to lean on, no pedigree to flaunt, just work, just grit, just something they couldn't buy back, no matter how many zeros they added to a check. 3 days after the wedding, Richard finally stopped pretending. He showed up at my office, no appointment, no warning. The receptionist, poor girl, looked like she was considering quitting on the spot. I told her to let him through. Let him see it for himself. The sleek glass walls, the hum of data running like blood through the company's veins. The quiet, unstoppable machinery of a future he had no hand in building. He stood stiffly in front of my desk, looking uncomfortable in his $1,000 suit. The same man who had once made boardrooms kneel now looked small, older, tired. I didn't offer him a seat. He sat anyway. We stared at each other across the desk, a canyon carved from a lifetime of unmet expectations. "I owe you an apology," he said finally, voice rough like gravel. "I underestimated you." A younger version of me might have crumbled under that rare concession, might have rushed to bridge the gap, desperate for some scrap of approval. But not this version, not anymore. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, until he realized this wasn't a negotiation he could win. "What do you want, Richard?" I asked, using his first name deliberately. He flinched, barely, but enough. "We need new leadership at Brooks Holdings," he said, forcing the words out. "Fresh ideas, innovation, someone who understands the future." He meant me. He didn't say it directly, but the desperation hung between us like smog. It would have been easy to gloat, to lord my victory over him, to twist the knife a little deeper, but revenge had already served its purpose. What I needed now wasn't vengeance, it was freedom. "I appreciate the offer," I said, voice measured. "But no," Richard blinked, as if he couldn't quite process that word coming from my mouth. "I'm building something different," I continued. "Something better." He opened his mouth, probably to argue, probably to bargain. I stood up, cutting him off. "This company," I said, sweeping a hand toward the window where the city stretched endlessly beyond, "was built because you refused to believe I could." I looked him in the eye, steady and unflinching. "I don't need your name. I don't need your blessing. And I sure as hell don't need your table." Richard stood too, slowly, as if the gravity of the moment weighed down every bone in his body. For the first time in my life, I think he finally saw me. Not the son he wished he had. Not the disappointment he pretended didn't exist. Just me, Nathaniel Brooks, builder of his own empire. He left without another word. The door clicked softly behind him. And just like that, the past finally let go of me. Weeks later, I sat in my new apartment, a penthouse technically. But it didn't feel like the clichés people imagined. It was quiet, open. Sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors in long, lazy streaks. A laptop hummed softly on the kitchen counter. New contracts blinking in my inbox. Partnership offers. Speaking invitations. Investment pitches. I sipped my coffee slowly, savouring the calm. Success wasn't a parade. It wasn't fireworks and champagne fountains. It was this: the ability to sit in peace, knowing you owe nothing to anyone who ever doubted you. Samuel and Andrea's marriage, from what I heard through the corporate grapevine, was already cracking under the pressure. The Collins family wasn't thrilled about the sudden instability of Brooks Holdings. Andrea, I suspected, was even less thrilled about the reality of Samuel without the illusion of future power. As for Richard, he faded from the news cycles. Brooks Holdings struggled to adapt. New blood moved in. The old gods crumbled quietly, as they always do. And me? I didn't send another message. I didn't return the calls that still trickled in sometimes. Weaker now, more pleading. I didn't need closure from people who had never offered real connection in the first place. My closure was this life, this breath, this second chance I had carved out with blood and doubt and relentless belief. No wedding toasts needed, no applause, just the quiet knowledge that sometimes the best revenge isn't showing them what they lost, it's showing yourself what you gained by walking away. Story 2. I never thought a blind date would change my life. Honestly, I wasn't even planning to go. The idea of meeting a total stranger felt awkward, forced, and a little desperate. But my best friend Maddie wouldn't let it go, so one rainy Thursday night, I showed up at a little Italian place downtown. And that's where I met Ethan. It sounds cheesy, but there was this instant connection. Not fireworks or movie magic, just comfort. Like finding a sweater you forgot you loved. We ended up talking for hours, losing track of time until the restaurant staff started clearing tables around us. That night turned into another, and another. 6 months later, we were practically inseparable. Ethan was steady where I was anxious, patient where I was impulsive. We dreamed out loud about traveling the world, starting a family, building a life together. 2 years after that first date, surrounded by a few close friends and our families, I married Ethan under a giant oak tree in my parents' backyard. It was simple, heartfelt, and perfect. From the beginning, we both wanted kids. That was the dream, messy, loud, beautiful chaos filling our home. We tried, and tried, and tried. Month after month, ovulation tests, vitamins, doctor visits, lifestyle overhauls, you name it, we did it. Every single negative test chipped away at us. The doctors were kind but unhelpful. You're both healthy. Sometimes it just takes time. Time, patience, hope. It became a cruel cycle. When I finally saw those 2 pink lines, I sobbed so hard I scared Maddie, who had barged into my apartment armed with 3 different brands of pregnancy tests just in case. Telling Ethan was the best moment of my life. I didn't want just to say the words. I wanted him to feel every bit of the joy we'd fought for. So I turned our living room into a tiny celebration, balloons, a "you're going to be a dad" banner, a tiny onesie that read "loading." 50% complete. When he walked through the door and saw the setup, his face morphed from confusion to shock to full-blown, boyish glee. He picked me up and spun me around until we were both laughing and crying. For once, the universe had said yes. Preparing for our daughter, who we decided to name Lily, became our new favourite pastime. Every ultrasound picture found a home on our fridge. Every tiny sock or onesie we bought made it feel more real. Her nursery became a little sanctuary, painted a soft, buttery yellow, full of whimsical clouds and tiny animal decals. At 12 weeks, when we finally felt safe enough to share our secret, we hosted a family dinner, just our immediate families. Or, at least, that was the plan. Ethan's younger brother, Aaron, showed up with a woman none of us had ever met, Morgan. She was intense, loud, opinionated, several years older than Aaron, and somehow both disinterested and competitive at the same time. Throughout the night, while everyone else showered us with hugs and excitement, Morgan sat stiffly in the corner, arms crossed, jaw tight. When Aaron pulled me into a hug, I hesitated before whispering, "Is she okay?" He shrugged. "Ignore her. She's always like this. I tried. God knows, I tried." Later, after dessert, Morgan cornered me. She wanted to see Lily's nursery. I didn't think twice. Maybe seeing the room, seeing our love poured into every detail, would thaw whatever ice was inside her. I was wrong. She criticized everything. Too bright. Yellow? Isn't that gender neutral and weird? These clothes feel cheap. You know babies need softer fabrics, right? At first I brushed it off. Everyone has opinions. But as her comments grew sharper, nastier, something in me snapped. "What exactly is your problem?" I asked, my voice low but firm. Before she could answer, my mum and Ethan's mum wandered in, gushing over the nursery. Morgan tried to backpedal, but it was too late. Both mums called her out, gently but firmly. Morgan flushed an angry red and stormed out of the room. Aaron left with her not long after, mumbling an apology on the way out. Later, Ethan pulled me aside. Apparently, Morgan had a painful history, a teenage pregnancy, a marriage that fell apart after years of infertility, a chip on her shoulder big enough to crush a small car. I felt bad for her. Truly. I even understood why our happiness might sting, but sympathy only goes so far when someone tries to tear you down during one of the most important moments of your life. After that, I kept my distance. When Lily was born a few months later, a tiny, perfect little bundle with a shock of dark hair, Aaron called, asking if they could come visit. Against my better judgment, I said yes. Morgan's first comment when she saw Lily? "Wow, she barely has any hair. Guess she'll be bald for a while." I smiled politely, but inside a small, fierce voice was screaming, "Enough." We didn't see them much after that. Life with a newborn is a whirlwind, and honestly, I preferred it that way. So when Aaron announced they were engaged, and that Morgan was pregnant, I swallowed my unease and congratulated them like a good sister-in-law should. Family is complicated, but sometimes you have to pick your battles. I thought that would be the end of it. I had no idea it was only the beginning. A few months before their wedding, Morgan called me out of the blue. I knew it wasn't going to be good news. She didn't waste time. "Are you bringing Lily to the wedding?" she asked, her tone clipped, almost accusatory. "Yeah," I said slowly, already sensing the fight brewing. "We're staying at the hotel. My mother-in-law and I worked out a plan to take turns watching her during the reception. She'll mostly stay in the room with us. dead silence on her end. Then she said, "I don't want your baby there." At first, I thought I misheard. "Excuse me?" "I want the focus to be on our miracle baby, not your daughter. I don't want people distracted." I just sat there, stunned. I mean, it's a wedding, not a toddler pageant. No one was going to snatch attention from her baby, and certainly not my sleepy 3-month-old who could barely hold her own head up. I tried to be diplomatic. Explained that Lily was no threat to anyone's spotlight, that we had no intention of parading her around like a show pony. We just needed to keep her close because we weren't comfortable leaving her with a stranger babysitter. Morgan didn't care. "If you can't respect my wishes, maybe you shouldn't come at all," she snapped. The call ended with me furious, and Ethan pacing the kitchen, trying to calm me down. Aaron eventually called to apologize for her. Said, "Of course you're invited. Bring Lily. Don't mind her. She's just stressed." Against my better judgment, again, I agreed to go. Not for Morgan. For Aaron. For Ethan. For family. Looking back now, I wish I hadn't. The day of the wedding, everything started fine. Lily was in her tiny white dress, gumming her fingers happily, while Ethan's mum cooed over her. I barely crossed paths with Morgan, except for a few death stares she threw my way every time someone smiled at Lily. It was ridiculous. Morgan's newborn, her miracle baby, was the star of the show, tucked into a pink lace bassinade by the altar. Everyone was gushing over her. No one was paying Lily much mind. The ceremony passed without incident, and we moved on to the reception. Ethan, his mum, and I had worked out a rotation for Lily. One of us would always be with her upstairs in the hotel room. That way, we could all still enjoy some of the party. During my turn to sneak upstairs, I checked in, fed Lily, and was just about to head back down when Ethan's mum insisted, "Go enjoy yourself for a bit. I'll watch her." So I kissed Lily's forehead and left. Maybe 20 minutes later, Ethan's mum came running into the reception like her hair was on fire. She found me near the dessert table and grabbed my arm. Her face was pale, her voice shaking. "She's gone," she whispered. "What? Who's gone?" "Lily," she choked out. I swear my heart stopped. Ethan was already at my side, eyes wide. Ethan's mum explained in a rush that she had been talking with Morgan, got distracted for just a second, went into the bathroom, and when she came out, Morgan and Lily were both gone. I didn't even think. We tore through that hotel like maniacs. We asked Aaron, the DJ, the caterers, anyone we could find. No one had seen them leave. Panic clawed its way up my throat. We alerted hotel security. Still nothing. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. That's when I called the police. Aaron tried to stop me. "She wouldn't hurt her," he kept saying, his voice cracking. "It's a misunderstanding. She's just emotional." But I knew better. I had seen that look in Morgan's eyes, the resentment, the bitterness. She didn't just want her wedding to be perfect. She wanted to punish me for existing. When the cops arrived, everything became a blur of questions and paperwork. Meanwhile, the mood at the reception shifted from celebration to horror. Guests whispered. Some people left. Morgan's side of the family looked humiliated. Finally, a hotel staff member flagged us down. We found them. We rushed to the back service patio, a grim, grey concrete area meant for trash pickups. And there she was. Morgan sat slumped in a plastic chair, holding Lily in one arm, a cigarette dangling from the other hand. Her own baby slept in a carrier beside her, completely ignored. I ran over, my hands shaking, and snatched Lily from her grasp. My baby was crying, her tiny fists balled up against her chest. Morgan didn't even flinch. She just stared at me with this smug, dead-eyed expression. "If you had respected my wishes," she said, This wouldn't have happened. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't postpartum stress. It wasn't a mistake. It was revenge, plain and simple. Ethan lost it. He started yelling. Aaron rushed over, looking horrified, trying to calm things down. The police officers stepped in and pulled Morgan aside. They asked me if I wanted to press charges. For a moment, I hesitated. Not because I doubted whether she deserved it. She absolutely did. But because part of me couldn't believe we had ended up here, at her wedding, at what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life, with her being arrested for kidnapping my daughter. But when I looked at Lily, at her red, puffy cheeks and tear-streaked face, the decision became crystal clear. I want to press charges, I said. Morgan's expression finally cracked. The smugness disappeared. Panic flooded her face as the officers cuffed her right there in her wedding dress, in front of dozens of horrified guests. Aaron begged us to reconsider. Ethan's mum shut him down hard. "Your wife is lucky that's all they're doing," she snapped. By the end of the night, Morgan was in a jail cell. Aaron was left alone at the reception, standing among half-eaten cake and confused, gossiping relatives. And Ethan and I were upstairs, rocking Lily back to sleep, wondering how the hell we got here. We were supposed to be celebrating a new chapter for our family. Instead, we were trying to hold ours together. The next few days felt like living inside a nightmare. Aaron called non-stop, texted, left voicemails, always the same desperate plea, "Please drop the charges." She didn't mean it. She was emotional. "You're tearing our family apart." I stopped answering. So did Ethan. Because here's the thing, Morgan didn't make a mistake. She made a choice. She chose to pick up my daughter without permission and disappear for over an hour. She chose to scare the hell out of us, to punish me for daring to exist at her wedding, and now she had to live with the consequences. A week later, we sat in a tiny courtroom for Morgan's first hearing. She looked different, smaller somehow. No fancy dress, no smug smile, just a plain jumpsuit and hollow eyes. Her lawyer argued that it was all a misunderstanding fueled by stress, that it was out of character, that Morgan was deeply remorseful. Which was news to me because she hadn't apologized once. When the judge asked if we wanted to make a statement, I stood up. My hands shook a little, but my voice didn't. "She took my child," I said, looking directly at Morgan. "She terrorized my family. And she did it because she thought she could control me. I want the court to understand she didn't act out of love. She acted out of cruelty." The judge nodded grimly. In the end, because it was her first offence, Morgan got community service, a year of mandatory counselling, and a permanent restraining order from me, Ethan, and Lily. Aaron wasn't done though, not even close. After the hearing, he cornered Ethan outside the courthouse. "You ruined her life," he spat. "She's the mother of my child. How could you do this to us?" Ethan, usually the calmest man in the room, looked him dead in the eye and said, "She kidnapped our daughter. You're lucky that's all that happened." And that was it. The line was drawn. We stopped answering Aaron's calls. We unfriended him on social media. We cut him out completely. The fallout spread fast. Ethan's parents, who had always been a little too forgiving for my taste, surprised everyone by siding with us. His mum in particular was furious. "If you choose to stay married to someone capable of hurting your own family," she told Aaron, "then you're no son of mine." They cut him off financially and emotionally. No more cozy Sunday dinners. No more babysitting help. No more anything. Aaron tried to play the victim online, posted vague Facebook statuses about family betrayal and people who should have your back but don't. His friends commented supportively, not knowing the real story. We stayed silent. We didn't need to defend ourselves. The people who mattered knew the truth. Meanwhile, life went on. Lily grew bigger, stronger. She learned to crawl, then walk, then talk. Every milestone made me even more certain that pressing charges had been the right call. We celebrated her first birthday with a backyard party filled with laughter, sunshine, and people who loved her, really loved her. No conditions attached. No drama, no Morgan, no Aaron. Just peace. About 3 months after the court case wrapped up, I got an email. It was from Morgan, no subject line. Just a few shaky paragraphs. She apologized. Said she was in therapy. Said she realized what she did was wrong. Asked if there was any way we could ever forgive her. I stared at the email for a long time. And then I deleted it. Because forgiveness isn't just words. It's actions, it's years of proof, it's trust rebuilt, slowly, painfully, and sometimes never at all. And some things, some lines, you just don't cross. Taking my daughter was one of them. Aaron eventually moved to another state with Morgan and their daughter. Last I heard, they were trying to start over somewhere new. Good for them. I wish them peace, but from a safe, comfortable distance. Ethan and I, we built something better. Stronger. Lily's world is small but full of love. Sometimes when I'm rocking her to sleep, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger, I think about everything we went through, the blind date, the heartbreak, the miracle, the betrayal. And I realize we didn't lose family that night. We just lost people pretending to be family. Real family shows up. Real family protects you. Real family doesn't use your child as a pawn in some sick power play. Morgan taught me that, the hard way. Story 3. This is one of those stories I never thought I'd tell, but here we are. Buckle up. I'm Mia 27F, and I've been married to my husband, Carter 27M, for a little over 3 years. We've been together since college, 6 years total, and honestly, life was pretty good. A few months ago, we found out we were expecting our first baby. Naturally, we were over the moon. To celebrate, Carter and I decided to host a baby shower at our new house. It was a cozy thing, just close family and friends. Among the invitees was Carter's older sister, Brooke 31F, and her husband, Jason. They've been married for about 5 years and have been trying for a baby for what feels like forever. Recently, they even started IVF treatments. Look, I'd like to say I felt bad for them. I might have. If Brooke hadn't spent the better part of our relationship making passive-aggressive comments, throwing shade, and treating me like some sort of intruder. I tried being nice for years, but at some point you just get tired of smiling through it. Our relationship? Surface-level cordial at best. We'd invite each other to events because that's what family does, but there was no real affection behind it. When Carter and I announced our pregnancy a couple of months ago, Brooke showed up to the announcement party with a sour face, barely said a word to me, and left early. Red flag? Definitely. Did I listen to my gut when planning the shower? Nope. Fast forward to the baby shower day. Carter and I were buzzing with excitement. We'd spent days decorating the house, setting up food, games, and all the cute baby stuff. Guests started arriving early, and so did Brooke and Jason. Because it was a new house, Carter was giving casual tours to the early guests. Brooke tagged along, and everything seemed normal. She smiled, made small talk, even complimented the house. Totally out of character, but I brushed it off. Maybe she was trying to be nice? Spoiler, she wasn't. Once the party was in full swing, I was chatting with some friends when Brooke sidled up to me and whispered that she wasn't feeling well. She asked if I could show her to our bedroom so she could lie down. I was heavily pregnant, exhausted and busy entertaining. So I suggested she find Carter and ask him instead. But she insisted, said she needed to speak with me privately. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I mean, if someone says they want a private word during your baby shower, you assume it's important, right? Maybe even an apology for all the coldness over the years. I was naive, so I waddled off with her down the long hallway leading toward the bedrooms. Our house layout is pretty open, but the bedrooms are tucked away past a narrow corridor. Midway down that corridor is a small supply closet, one we hadn't even properly set up yet. No lights, no ventilation except for a tiny high window. It's basically a glorified box. As we passed it, Brooke suddenly grabbed my arm hard, shoved me into the closet, and slammed the door shut. Before I could even react, I heard the click of the lock. I froze for a second. My brain couldn't process what just happened. Then the panic hit. See, I have severe claustrophobia, like medically documented. Everyone in the family knows this. Small, dark, enclosed spaces. They're my worst nightmare. I started banging on the door, screaming for help. My heart was racing so fast, it felt like my chest was going to explode. I begged Brooke to let me out, but I never even heard her outside. She was gone. Meanwhile, back in the living room, music was blasting. Laughter, chatter. No way anyone could hear me from that far away. I kept pounding on the door until my voice gave out and my hands went numb. The air in that tiny space felt thick, heavy. I started to hyperventilate, and then everything went black. I woke up to bright hospital lights and Carter's panicked face hovering above me. Turns out, about 20 minutes after I went missing, Carter realized something was wrong. It was time for the gift opening, and I was nowhere to be found. Brooke had casually told everyone that I was resting in the bedroom. A believable enough excuse given how pregnant and tired I was. Nobody questioned it. But Carter, bless him, had a bad gut feeling. When he checked the bedroom and found it empty, he started frantically searching the house. He found me unconscious in the closet. Apparently I was pale, barely breathing. He didn't waste a second. He called 911 while a couple of family members helped carry me out. They rushed me to the hospital, terrified that something had gone wrong with the pregnancy. Miraculously, the baby was fine. I had passed out from a combination of panic, low blood pressure, a pregnancy thing I'd been dealing with, and claustrophobic shock. But it could have been much, much worse. At the hospital, while I was still dazed and coming to, Carter confronted Brooke back at the house. She denied everything, said we had talked, made up, and that I'd chosen to stay in the bedroom to rest. She acted all confused about how I ended up in the closet. Classic gaslighting. Thing is, my friends had overheard Brooke asking me for that private conversation. They knew she was the last person to see me. When Carter connected the dots, the whole room turned ice cold. The next morning, once I was home and feeling somewhat better, Carter sat me down. He asked me to tell him everything. So I did, in painful detail. When I got to the part about banging on the door and begging Brooke to let me out, Carter's face turned a shade of red I didn't even know was humanly possible. He called a family meeting. And this time I was there, ready to tell my side. So, like I said, Carter called a family meeting. It was that kind of heavy morning where, something bad is about to happen, but you can't exactly run from it either. I sat there on the couch, still feeling like a ghost of myself. My hands were shaky. I was mad, sure, but mostly I just felt empty, like all my energy had been drained in that dark little closet. Brooke showed up looking like she'd been dragged through a hurricane. Jason was with her, hovering awkwardly like he didn't know whether to sit down or just bolt for the door. The moment they walked in, the whole room went dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop. It was all the core family, Carter's parents, Elaine and Richard, my sister-in-law Emma, a few cousins who had stayed overnight. Carter didn't waste time. He stood up and calmly, way calmer than I could have managed, asked me to tell everyone what had happened. So I did. I told them about how Brooke asked me for a private chat, how she grabbed me, shoved me into the closet, locked the door, how I screamed and begged to be let out until my body just gave up, how I woke up in the hospital with no idea if my baby was okay. By the end of it, my voice was shaking, but I didn't cry. I just let the facts sit there like a thick, ugly cloud in the room. Brooke looked wild. She immediately started crying, big, messy sobs that didn't feel real. She kept saying over and over that it was just a prank, that she never meant to hurt me. I thought it would be funny, she blurted out, wiping her nose on her sleeve. I swear I was going to let you out after a few minutes. I forgot you had claustrophobia. I panicked. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Jason looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Elaine, Carter's mum, put her head in her hands. She didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, she looked up, and her face was pure heartbreak. She said, "Brooke, you knew how badly Mia struggles with small spaces. You knew this wasn't a prank. This was cruelty." Brooke started shaking her head furiously, saying we were blowing everything out of proportion, that it was all just bad timing and a stupid joke. Nobody was buying it. Not even Jason. And that guy has defended Brooke through everything before. When I finally spoke, I kept my voice as steady as I could. I told her straight, "This isn't about a prank. You wanted to punish me. For getting pregnant before you, for giving your parents their first grandchild, for existing." Brooke opened her mouth like she was about to argue. But honestly, there was no point. Everybody could see it. The resentment had been boiling under her skin for months, probably years. Elaine stood up, and what she said next genuinely stunned all of us. She told Brooke in front of everyone that she was done. Not mad for a few weeks done. Done. Elaine said she couldn't in good conscience support someone who would endanger a pregnant woman out of jealousy. And, plot twist, she and Richard had been paying for Brooke's IVF treatments, fully covering them. She said that was over, effective immediately. You could practically hear the floor crumble under Brooke's feet. She looked at her parents like they'd slapped her. Then the screaming started. Jason jumped up, yelling about how they couldn't just abandon them like this. That IVF was their only chance to have a family. That it wasn't fair to punish their future child because Brooke made a mistake. But Elaine and Richard stayed firm. Richard, who barely says more than 10 words at a time usually, told Jason flat out, "We were helping because we believed Brooke was ready to be a mother. We were wrong." And that was that. Brooke was sobbing uncontrollably now, saying she didn't mean it. She was sorry. She would do anything to fix it. She actually got on her knees and crawled toward me, clutching my hands and begging me to convince everyone to forgive her. It was a lot, way too much. I pulled my hands away gently and told her I couldn't fix this for her. That forgiveness wasn't something you could demand like a favor. That trust, once shattered, wasn't easy to rebuild, if it ever could be. I said the words that, honestly, I didn't even realize were true until they came out of my mouth. I don't feel safe around you anymore. And I meant it. No amount of crying, no apology, no backpedaling could erase what she did. The risk she took with my life, my baby's life. For what? Because I got pregnant first? Nah, no coming back from that. After a while, Jason dragged her to her feet, and they left without another word. It was like the house exhaled when they were gone. Heavy, sad, but weirdly peaceful too. The rest of the family stayed for a little while, just sitting together in stunned silence. Nobody really knew what to say. How do you even process something like that? Eventually, everyone left, and Carter and I sat there on the couch, staring at the wall like zombies. I was exhausted, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Carter pulled me into his arms and whispered, "You're safe now. She can't hurt you anymore." And for the first time all day, I let myself cry. Silent, ugly tears that I didn't even try to stop. In the days that followed, the fallout was brutal. Brooke went nuclear on social media, posting vague rants about betrayal and family choosing outsiders over blood. I didn't respond. I just blocked her everywhere and kept it moving. Elaine and Richard held firm on cutting her off financially, and even Emma, who had always been kind of neutral, said she was done with Brooke too. Jason and Brooke apparently tried to scrape together money for another IVF round on their own, but from what I heard, it didn't go well. Their marriage started unraveling not long after that. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. Mostly, I just felt sad. Sad that it had to come to this. Sad that Brooke threw away everything, family, support, love, for something so petty and ugly. But at the same time, a tiny part of me felt free. It's been a few months since all that went down. Life didn't just snap back to normal. It had to become something new. And weirdly enough, I'm grateful for that. First off, Carter and I had our baby, a little girl we named Lily. She came into the world screaming her tiny lungs out, healthy and strong, and every day I look at her and think, "You're my miracle. You're why I survived all of this." Motherhood's been everything, exhausting, beautiful, overwhelming. Some days I'm running on coffee and 3 hours of sleep, but honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And you know what's funny? Even with everything that happened, even with all the broken pieces lying around, there's a strange kind of peace now. The kind that only comes when you're finally free from pretending everything's okay. As for Brooke, yeah, things didn't get better for her. Word got around fast in the family, not because we went around gossiping, but because, well, people notice when you're suddenly persona non grata at every family gathering. A few weeks after the baby shower disaster, Brooke made this big, dramatic post online. In it, she basically painted herself as the tragic victim, said her jealousy got the better of her, but that the family had been cruel to cut her off. She even accused me of weaponizing my pregnancy against her, whatever that's supposed to mean. At first, I was tempted to respond, to correct the lies, to set the record straight. But honestly, what's the point? People believe what they want to believe. The people who know me, who really know me, didn't need an explanation. So I stayed silent, blocked her, moved on. Meanwhile, her marriage cracked. Jason stuck it out for a while, longer than anyone expected, to be honest. But you could see it in his eyes the few times we bumped into each other around town, the exhaustion, the regret. It wasn't about the IVF money. It was about trust, and once that's gone, what's left? A couple of months later, we heard through mutuals that they were separating. Too much damage, someone said. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. Honestly, it just made me sad. Brooke had wanted so badly to be a mum. She still does, I'm sure. But somewhere along the way, her jealousy, her bitterness, her need to win, it ate everything else. And now she's standing alone in the wreckage. Not because the world was unfair, but because she burned every bridge herself. As for me, I made a decision pretty early on. I wasn't going to let Brooke's choices define the rest of my life. I wasn't going to carry the bitterness with me. It would have been so easy to stay angry, to let the whole thing live rent-free in my head forever. But I had bigger things to focus on. like tiny fingers wrapping around mine, like midnight feedings and first smiles, like building a home filled with laughter and warmth and love. And that's what I did. That's what I'm still doing every single day. Family looks a little different now. Smaller, sure, but better, realer. Elaine and Richard, Carter's parents, have been incredible. They apologized more times than I could count for not seeing the warning signs earlier. They told me they loved me, that I was family no matter what, and they meant it. Emma, Carter's sister, comes over every weekend to hang out with Lily. She calls herself the fun aunt, and honestly, she's killing it. Even my own parents, who live a few hours away, have been showing up more than ever, sending care packages, driving down for surprise visits, just being present. It's like losing the toxic parts made room for the good stuff to breathe and grow, and that's a kind of blessing I never saw coming. Sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet and Lily's finally asleep, I think about Brooke. I wonder if she regrets what she did, if she lies awake replaying that day, wishing she could undo it. I don't know. I probably never will. And honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. Because healing isn't about getting apologies. It's not about seeing karma do its thing. It's about choosing peace even when you were handed chaos, about choosing yourself, your family, your joy, even when others tried to rip it away. I chose peace. I chose joy. I chose me. And every time Lily's tiny hand curls around my finger, every time Carter looks at me like I'm the whole world, I know without a shred of doubt I chose right.